Hey, Canada Bob.
Hey, how you doing there, eh?
Hey, well, such a dork. Canada Bob, I don't mean to be mean, man. I just think you're hilarious.
No, it's fine. You know what? Everybody's got their own way.
Yeah, well, you're hilarious, and you say things that are funny. So, hey, man, but I got to ask you some questions because you're really good at this, the view of the Constitution.
Hey, shoot, I'll do what I can.
All right, so President Trump declares a national emergency to build this wall.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
You know, I actually figured out a solution for you guys.
What? Okay, I gotta hear this. I gotta hear this.
I figured it all out. You guys don't have to worry anymore. Okay, so I was at the local hockey game, the Ice Pickers. Oh, go Pickers! And you know, I'm enjoying my Labatt Blue, and I look down and I'm like, I've got it. Okay, so I see an advertisement for Timbits, Tim Hortons Donuts, right? And I'm like,
by the way, shout out to Tim Hortons, man.
Hey, man, I wanted a coffee and some Timbits. I don't even know if they carry it anymore, but, you know, guy's got a dream. And I figured it out. Here's how you pay for the wall. You erect the wall, and you start putting up advertisements for like Coca-Cola or Nike or, you know, Starbucks. And that way when people are crossing over, they're like, hey, I want a Coke. And so they go and pay, and you just pay for the wall that way. It's going to solve your problems. You solved everything else with advertisements. I mean, heck, you got advertisements on the Washington Monument, right?
Right. Don't think that's the best solution, but I'm going to go with you on this.
You know, okay.
Well, you know, hey, I'm not trying to like diss you here, Canada Bob. I'm just, you know, hey, advertising may detract. Well, it actually might work in detraction. But got another question for you.
Sure.
So, a lot of these people are starting to run for president on the Democratic side. You know, the Kamala Harris and
occasional Cortex and. I gotta give a shout out to Gad Sad for that one.
Or now Bernie Sanders. Notice that all these presidential candidates are like really progressive. They're not even Democrat anymore. They're progressive.
Oh yeah, they're way out there.
What do you think about this whole progressive movement, man? They want to spend all my money.
It's progressing somewhere, I'll tell you that much.
It's progressing in my wallet.
It's right in my wallet. You know, up in Canada, we got Trudeau, and he's quite the progressive. And it's great because, you know, he pulls a lot of money out of my wallet and my wallet's empty. And, you know, then I progress to go to the government to get more money that they took from me. So, you know, if you want a progression in a circle, it's perfect.
How do we solve it, Canada Bob?
How do you solve it legally is the question.
Oh, heavens. Sorry, Canada Bob. But thank you for answering all my questions. We'll see you soon.
Hey, no problem. I'll see you next time there.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Self-Evident Podcast. This is episode 23 in the house. And again, guys, thank you for, again, all the support. If you guys want to go to theselfevidenttruth.com, please do so. The traffic's been going up a little bit.
Yeah.
Got some more subscribers on YouTube. We're still growing slowly but surely, but it's getting there. Hey, guys, listen, if you guys want to support us, please go on the website. You can do so to help support the podcast because we need it. As we continue to grow, we obviously need more things. I'd like to redo, you know, a set for us and all these things like that. But also, too, just getting better camera stuff and all that, you know, all the stuff that we need to keep this thing looking pro and to keep us continuing to do it. Because we want to keep providing you more content that's constitutional, that's truthful, and that's just right. You know what I mean? So we're not about a party here. We're about the truth. And so we love liberty, we love freedom, and we're doing that for our future generations. So what's up, Mike?
How's it going, Massey?
Make on the make. That sounded ridiculous,
I
but
don't know how well you'd make a
because I'm on
radio
coffee,
host.
man. I had some Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, we got to give a shout out to
Chick-fil-A,
for
man.
providing us chicken, and
we
to
paid
Jonathan for paying for the chicken.
I don't even pay him. He pays me to be
he
here
buys
to run
us
the
chicken. He's like, hey, I'll bring you guys food if you let me record.
Right. So, guys,
Yes.
right. So last week we had K. Carl Smith on, and that was a killer show, man.
I'm
Like killer
so
show.
glad we had him on.
And again, I just to see the other side of Black history and to really understand how to combat both sides of the argument, the current conservative viewpoint of the Constitution and the Democratic view or the liberal view of the Constitution. You're combating it through one man's life who affirmed the writer's foundings as a slave. We're talking about Frederick Douglass, and K. Carl did a smash out job on it, man. Brought some revelation to me, got to really understand Frederick Douglass. And dude, I want to say I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican too. Thank you, K.
Yes,
Carl.
Thank you. I'm
And I
there.
mean that, man.
I'm there because I never realized that there was somebody who really embodied all of this that didn't carry the baggage that unfortunately the founders kind of have today. You know, everybody, the whole slavery thing, well, they own slaves. So how,
Right.
well, yeah, we can talk that till we're blue in the face, but like Frederick Douglass really puts forth of, he was in the middle of slavery. He was a part of that, yet he still had faith in the Constitution and what it was supposed to represent. Like
Exactly.
that's
And how are you
ahead
going to argue
above.
with that?
You can't argue with that.
How are you going to argue with that? It's like, how do you argue with, an African American? I don't even like saying that. How do you argue against a black person or a Hispanic person who speaks out against racism, that they want to stop it and they don't see it the way that other people see it? You going to argue with them? No. You know what I mean?
Well,
because they're showing their viewpoint of it, man. It's like, I just want a united America. That's all,
Yeah.
you know?
And you know what I love most about him is that he went from like zero in terms of being a slave to just dominating.
And he did, man.
Dude, he taught himself how to read. He taught other people how to read. He became this very prominent, disciplined person who really became successful. And it's like, that's the epitome of the American dream. Overcoming all of these obstacles. Look, nobody today in real terms, like how many people today overcome as much as he overcame?
No, you nailed it. And right. And one thing we have to say, especially in a me-centered generation, or I should say a me-centered America in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Even a me-centered church in a lot of ways, we see the church being more me-centered instead of Christ-centered and all those things. I think, how do you overcome that? Well, you got to talk about sacrifice. We got to talk about many men and women have fought and died for this country. Many men and women who died to preserve American liberty and freedom, like our founders did, though not perfect. And I think Frederick Douglass outlined that very well. They weren't perfect men, and they kind of do have a stain on themselves. Some of them, not all of them. They do have a stain on themselves. They had a national sin going on, but then that same person can turn around and say, but this is what they were trying to say the whole time.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. So anyways, guys, if you haven't checked that out, go to Podcast 22.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Check it out.
It's on one of the highlights. If you go to the highlight of 22, there's a link, and all these will have highlights, and we'll link the full show in the description below. So please get on our social media and all that stuff too. Follow us and all that stuff. You get really, really quick updates. I sometimes go live and do some real stuff. And one of the things we wanted to talk about today was the national emergency. And there's a big question surrounding, listen, I want to start this off with this, okay? A couple days ago or sometime last week, I posted something on Facebook about priorities, right? We're so worried about an emergency on the border, but what about babies? And people thought I was coming against Trump for that. Not my point. The point was, where are our priorities? I see where there's illegals coming into the country. True. They're stealing a bunch of money. Why? Because Congress allowed us to have a welfare system. Why? Because we weren't following the Constitution. Why? Because we elected immoral people who didn't know the Constitution to start electing things that they didn't need. Why? Because we had an amendment called the 14th Amendment that gave the authority to Congress to do all these things. Why? Because we didn't follow the Constitution in the first place. Why? Because we were immoral. So the only people we can really blame is ourselves.
Yeah.
In the end, right? And I say ourselves even now because I didn't ask for this either, but I have to do something about it. My post was not against President Trump. I am not against the president. I'm for good, godly government. I'm for constitutional government, limited government, and freedom and liberty. That's it.
And Go ahead. I think it's vital for us to keep our leaders accountable.
Yes.
Because as soon as we decide, well, you can bend the rules on this because you're my guy, we've fallen into the trap that everybody else falls on. So I would rather be on principle and foundation and then keep them to that standard than decide to change the standard and walk it, in the wrong direction.
Yeah, so let's go with a kingdom, because we don't have a kingdom. We have a republic, again, and we're going to talk about that today. In the kingdom of Israel, or Judah, you know what I mean? Yeah. Who was the king? David, right? At the time. King David was a man after God's own heart. Who was the prophet that kept him accountable?
Nathan.
Exactly. Why is that wrong? Now, David was a man after God's own heart. He went and sinned with Bathsheba. Nathan wasn't there to condemn him. Nathan was there to redeem him.
Yeah.
To say, hey, you did that. You're the one that killed Uriah. You're the one that did it. Repent. It wasn't to bash David. It was to keep him in check and keep him in line, because you're running God's government here, man. You know what I mean? It's the same thing we're trying to do here. I'm not saying I'm not Nathan, right? But I know enough of the Constitution, and a lot of my friends that are leaders and that kind of thing. All we're doing is keeping Congress, the Supreme Court, and the president accountable. I don't care what party you're on. Shouldn't you be happy for that? No. Shouldn't you be happy that the populace is actually asking questions and saying, hey, man, we want to get involved? Why wouldn't you be happy about that? Matter of fact, the Bible says that a son that endures chastening is a son. He's not an illegitimate child. And God does that. He chastens those that he loves, he says in Hebrews, right? Yeah. And he's a son if he chastens them. Well, if we're doing our job to uphold our elected officials, shouldn't you be happy? I'm not against you. I'm for you. I want you to do your job right. You know why? Because I want to see future generations be free and have liberty. That's all. I'm not against you, man. Good job for what you do right, man. Praise God. You've done a lot of cool things. And the things that you say about making sure we need to put more pressure on the abortion industry, all these things, great. Fantastic. And someone had, and why I'm going with this, because a lot of people attacked, like, you're saying President Trump ain't anointed. No, I believe that the person that we elect in that office has some type of an anointing. He's going to do something. But are you going to say that because Trump is doing this or Obama's doing that, like, that they shouldn't be in office, or they should be? We elect them. Yeah. Right? And
I think God allows elections to take place. Mm-hmm. God allows us to pick our leaders. So therefore, it is a God allowed, or I don't even want to say God ordained, because that goes the wrong direction.
No,
but
we just reap what we sow.
It was permissible by God.
Yeah.
So therefore, we reap what we sow. One of the things that came to mind was Saul, King Saul. So Samuel comes to him and says, "Why do I hear the bleating of sheep in my ears?" Right? Saul was supposed to go in and kill everything. God said, kill everything. Samuel comes like, you disobeyed God. You need to have somebody keeping your leaders accountable. In a spiritual sense, we need somebody who's keeping leaders accountable.
And do you know why?
We're the people, right? We elected them. We're responsible for them. So we've got to keep them accountable. We've got to keep them to a standard. And guess what? Our standard is the Constitution, which I wholeheartedly believe is a document that God is pleased with if we follow it. Now, I'm not saying it's a spiritual document. Don't decide that, he's saying
the Constitution is a law document.
God's document. No, but it's a law document. But I truly believe that our founders were so prayerful about putting this together, and the sources that they used were so prayerfully put together that it's a document that if we follow, and we follow God in our hearts, we can be blessed.
That's right. You know what's crazy too is current Congress and Senate, current Supreme Court, current presidencies over the last, I'd say, 100 years, maybe a little bit more than that. Notice how it's not been to decrease the size of government, but only increase the size of government.
Always to expand.
Always to expand.
And people freak out when you try to decrease.
Bro, listen, look. If I didn't love the president, if I didn't love President Trump, I wouldn't say anything, and I would just agree with what he says. But then I become a yes man. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm doing him not a disservice. I'm doing him a disservice, I should say, by not pointing out errors. And again, people say, what authority do you have? That's the point. I don't. I'm the people. And the document gives me the authority to tell him, you don't have the authority to do what you're doing. That's all. I love you, Trump. As a person, as a soul, as a human, I love you. I want Christ to redeem you. And if you've been redeemed, praise God. I don't know. I mean, people say he's a Christian. People, he has people pray for him and all these things. Praise God. I want to believe that. And I want to believe that. And if he's publicly professed that, which I believe he has, praise God. He's a part of the fold. Amen, right? I want to back that side of you. When it comes to policy, if all you're doing is increasing the size of government, you've done no better than than the predecessor. Yeah. Than those who've succeeded before you, than those who have been before you. You've done no better. Right?
And then you sit on the chair of inconsistency.
And yeah, you do. And we would sit on the chair of inconsistency by pointing out what Obama did and Bush did, but not Trump. Because Trump. All hail Trump. And we're not for that. I'm sorry. And we're not going to be that way. But listen, It's the fact that I do love the president. Look, I love America. I love my rights that God gave me. I don't want a man to come in and take them. I don't want a kingdom. That's all. To premise that, and I want to answer these questions. Everybody had them. Like, so you don't think he's anointed by God. You don't think this. One lady said to me basically that he's keeping campaign promises. No, well, the wall's a campaign promise, but he promised that Mexico would pay for it. Now we're the ones ending up paying for it. And all these things. So don't throw the campaign thing at me either, please, because I really want you to see it's not that I'm doing this to incur some kind like the kind of cult following that Donald Trump has, that all presidents have, really, the kind of following that he has. What benefit does it do me to make you mad?
Yeah.
If I want the message of liberty to get out there, it doesn't do me any good to say these things in truth if it's unpopular. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
The unpopular opinion is this. That's on you, not the government. You elect the right men. You're the one who's supposed to protect your house. You're the one that's supposed to provide for the communities as a church. You're the one that's supposed to help the poor and the sick and the needy. That's your job, not a government. What is wrong? That is an unpopular position today in a lot of ways. Because let's be honest here. Let's get into this national emergency thing. Were you going to say something before I
Yeah. Right before we get into the national emergency thing, I think something important, you and I were talking earlier about this. And one of the things that I wanted to stress is like, we're more directed, more passionate about the idea of liberty and about the idea of limited government, constitutional government. That's our main goal. Now, you have people on the other side who are saying Trump's expanding his powers, Trump's standing outside of the Constitution on
Democrats
issues.
say that now.
Democrats are saying.
Did you see the last 8 years of
exactly.
What?
Like, did you follow? Now, we're trying to be as consistent as possible from Obama to Trump, but we're also, our target is to get everybody to understand what liberty really is. And I can't do that with those people if I just come out and say, well, it's good now that Trump's doing it. And with those people, I can say, you know what? Here's an issue that I agree with you on that. Now let's talk about why you and I agree that this is outside of the Constitution, why that's important, because it scares you. And I'm glad it does, because it should. Because it scares me when your guy gets in office and all of a sudden you decide that it's okay to expand his powers. As liberty-minded conservatives, we all need to get together on that topic and that issue and go, we're not just preaching to the choir here. We're not supposed to be just standing with each other. We're supposed to be reaching out and saying, look, you want your rights? You want your liberty? Well, the things that I can agree are your rights and liberty, here it is. Now, there are some things I do not agree is your right, like to kill the unborn. I don't agree that's a right. So we got to discuss that. But there are things we can reach and connect with.
Exactly. And that's kind of where we got to, I really want to segue into this because, again, I'm going to say it again. I honor the office of president, and I believe Trump's done a lot of cool things, good things, godly things, and we'll call those things out, man.
Yeah.
Like you stepping in and saying, you know, Jerusalem is the capital city. I mean, that takes guts because a lot of presidents have promised it, and he did it. Good for you, man. You know what? And I'm seeing more and more as I study the whole Israel thing, and as I talk to other leaders and pastors and things like that, it's very important for us to really support that. And, you know, that's just one thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, the other thing, too, is I'm seeing where Trump, or President Trump, I should say, I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't like when people say Trump or Obama. We shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
They were president. We should give the
we
title
are
as such.
vowing to change that about ourselves.
Yeah, we are. And I want to be very respectful as I can. With President Trump, even meeting with black leaders today, was it black leaders or it was just like 100-year type thing in commencement speeches and meeting with as many people as he can to try to unite. Is he perfect at it? No, dude, of course not. But the fact that he's trying and people still look at him as a racist divider and all these things, it's like, I don't know. You know, I don't see that. I don't believe he is. People have asked me if he's racist. No, I don't believe it.
I don't believe he is.
I don't believe it either. I just believe he's really good at sparking up conflict because it gets people to talk about it. That's what he does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
I was going to use one example just because I want to clear this up because it frustrated me when it happened. There was a point where he argued that he didn't want a judge to oversee a case because everybody was like, see, he doesn't want a Mexican ruling over this. Well, no, he was saying California. He was saying this judge because this judge had been a lead attorney for La Raza for 20 years.
Oh, so it was biased.
Biased. That's like a black man saying, I don't want that judge because that judge has been sitting on the council of the KKK for 20 years.
Yeah, good point.
It's really the same
Great
thing.
point.
And so it's like, it's not that Trump was just mad because he's Mexican. It was because this guy was extremely biased going into the case in the first
Exactly.
place.
And two, let's be honest here, his campaign.
President Trump,
yeah. And President Trump, before he was president, when he campaigned on, hey, illegals are coming here, they're bringing drugs, bringing crime, they're murderers, rapists. Dude, obviously, if you would just open your ears, he was not saying all immigrants, okay? He's not. He really, I believe, wants to protect this country. I agree. The methods is all I'm after. Is if you're setting precedents the way that you're doing, and we continue to do this, I'm telling you. And dude, it's funny because when I posted that, I kept doing in the comments, I'm telling you, once this precedent sets here, you get a Democratic president or a Democratic socialist president, they're going to declare a national emergency on guns, I promise. And guess what happened, man? There was an article the next day saying, man, a Democratic president could declare a national emergency on guns because a lot of people are dying at the hands of guns. Dude, I'm telling you, that'll never happen.
Health, climate change.
Yeah, so because I really want to get into this national emergency thing, but I kind of want to go with a couple points here. People a lot tell me, and I want your perspective, right? People say it can never happen here. Can you tell me what happened when we interned Japanese people here in the 40s?
Exactly.
We did that.
It was, 120,000 Japanese we interned into camps?
Now, people could say, well, that was a wartime measure or whatever they want to call it. It doesn't matter. We did that. That is scary crap. Just because you're Japanese. Because you might be a spy. Just like the TSA, man, which I believe is an illegal entity to me. There's no constitution except when Bush signed the Patriot Act. President Bush signed the Patriot Act.
That's going to take us a while to get over that. Yeah.
You know what? That's the media narrative, and I got to stop that. But President Bush, and I really do want to apologize. I don't want to be disrespectful to the presidents. Because you know what? We were supposed to pray for him. And President Obama, Jonathan brought up today, President Obama, what did he say, bro? Could you tell me? Sorry about that. He was caught in the middle of ice, chewing ice.
He was giving a speech at some college or wherever it was.
Here, come here. Get over here. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan.
With his Chick-fil-A cup.
Basically, I was listening to a Ben Shapiro podcast, and he was actually giving Obama praise for something he did that was good. He was saying that Obama was telling the truth for once, and he had a few moments in his presidency that he did, and it's like the people we don't like a lot, when they say something good, we have to acknowledge it because, they're never going to do it on our side. Somebody has to start, be the bigger person, or forget that. Just when people do something good, whether you like them or not, say, hey, that was a good thing you did. Yeah. And Obama was just saying that, like, men need to be men and stuff, and rappers, like, they have all these women that they're after, or like they like saying they've been with many women, and it's like some kind of insecurity in them. He was just like talking the truth, and I was like, wow, like, where was that guy in the last 8 years? So.
Yeah. And we got to give props to that, and here's why: because encouragement always wins over, love wins over. You know what I mean? And I've always thought this, man. It'd be cool to sit down with him, just to talk with him, because he was a constitutional lawyer, and say, dude, but constitutionally, let's get real here. You know what I mean? President Obama said, well, I didn't want to have to do this, but I'm going to have to do this. This is in my power. I'm doing everything that I'm authorized to do by my lawyers and advice of counsel to mandate health care. What did President Trump just say? Yep. I'm doing everything that's legal within my powers to declare a national emergency.
Now, here's where the question comes, and this opens it up for us, and I'm going to throw this to you.
I'm glad. Do it.
Why then, if it's legal, is it not constitutional? Because I've had people bring this up to me, right? Okay, so it was enacted by Congress, therefore it's legal, therefore he can do it. How can you say that's not constitutional, right?
Right, and that's kind of where we have to go constitutionally to what are the powers of the president, right? In the Constitution. I'm not talking about bills that have been passed and U.S. codes and all that stuff. I'm talking about constitutionally. And then this is where I still got to do a little bit more homework, and I'm being honest here. Can they enact bills that are against the Constitution if there's no amendment? Does that make sense what I'm asking you? So to give, go ahead.
I would vote no, but
Yeah, but they've been doing it.
Yeah.
Right? They've been doing it. So let's just go with what the powers of the president are. Article 2, Section 1. The executive power shall be vested in the president of the United States of America. He shall hold this office during the term of 4 years, and altogether with the vice president chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. And it goes through this whole election process. Now it says this executive power shall be vested in the president. It doesn't elaborate on what executive power is. Because it doesn't elaborate on it, that doesn't mean you assume what it means.
yeah. It's and that's there's two different views. They're the
elastic clause.
yeah,
Because
where-
it didn't say it.
therefore anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other view of, well, if it didn't say it, it's not in there.
And
right?
and I prefer that.
Absolutely.
Here, look at me. Model of health, right? I'm not trying to make fun of my... Well, I am. It's
Yeah,
kinda
you
funny.
are.
All right. Diets. I could say, well, it doesn't say that I like vegans, right? I'm a vegetarian. Well, beer is a vegetarian food. It's a vegetarian drink. Ain't no meat in it. Ain't no animal products in it. But is it good for you on a diet? See what I mean? When
That's
you
a
leave
good-
it when you
good
leave it
point.
open-ended. When you leave something open-ended, it will not help you. As a matter of fact, it might make you worse because you're going to try to find other things to please yourself. Oreos are vegan. There's no animal products in Oreos.
So here's a question for you, and I hope this is clear enough. So then what do you do about the issues that aren't defined?
You don't give them the authority
Right.
to do it. See, that's kind of the issue here. That's in the power of the Congress. They have the power of legislation, Article 1, Section 1. So the issues of the people are to be dealt with by Congress, not the president. Make sense? So that's the problem here is border wall, border security, all these things. That's all under the Congress. They still need to approve those measures, right? Now, does the president have the authority to protect us? Absolutely. In wartime, he has to protect us. So he's got the, and then we're going to go to Section 2.
I
right?
was going to say, follow that up. Then.
Right. So Article 2, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. The president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states, which are called into actual service of the United States. And he may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer, blah, 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 power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. He's got the authority over the military. But if you look at that, it says he shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy. But when called into actual service of the United States, who's the only one that can declare war?
Congress.
Exactly, because he's not a king. King has the authority over everything.
Yeah.
That's not what this says, right? So they have to follow the authority of Congress. Dude, let's continue, right? I'm just going to continue with this, and I want you to kind of... he shall have the power with and by the advice and the consent of the Senate to make treaties, provide 2/3 of senators present to concur, and he shall nominate, and by with the advice and consent of the Senate, he shall appoint ambassadors and other public ministers, consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, all that stuff. So he's got Gorsuch, and he's got Kievna.
Kievna.
He just appointed.
Kievna.
Yeah, and he might, if Miss Judge Ginsburg passes away, and we need to
You
pray.
might
We
have
need
a
to pray
third.
for her, man.
Yeah.
You know, she's got a soul too.
She doesn't
you know?
have a whole lot
She
of
doesn't-
time left.
and it's not looking good. We need to pray for those people, right? So he may appoint a third in this process, but he's got the to make treaties. But even then, you need 2/3 of the council or 2/3 of Senate, 2/3 of Congress to pass that treaty, and he needs the advice of the Congress to do that.
Yep.
Right? Here's another one. The president shall have power to fill up vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions, which shall expire at the end of their next session. Section 3, he shall from time to time give the Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish it.
He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them in case of disagreement between them with respect to the time of adjournment. He may adjourn them in such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care of the laws to be faithfully executed and shall commission all the officers of the United States.
Did you notice the theme here? And I think it's important to see the spirit.
I know where you're going with it. Go ahead.
He's always in connection with Congress. It's
Bingo.
never his own decision. It's always he's got to come to agreement with Congress on this stuff. He's
Right.
always got to have their approval. They've got to go back and forth and work together. It's never he gets to do this on his own. And I think that's where we need to look at these laws that have expanded his power and go, do these stand with the original spirit of what the position was meant to be?
Yeah, and again, let me go with your theme for a minute, because the section 4 is talking about the vice president stuff.
Yeah.
There was nowhere in there where the president has the power to do anything to the American people.
Yeah.
This is all directed between him and Congress and what's going on externally, not internally. He's not supposed to deal with us on a day-to-day level. So when President Obama pushed through health care, through executive order, or whatever that was, he ended up taxing the American people. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
You have no authority for that. There's no amendment for that. So when people say, well, HR something or whatever that was enacted in 76, the National Emergency Powers Act, it gives him that authority. But wait a minute, doesn't that scare you? Doesn't that scare you? Because you've now circumvented this whole thing here to give one man the authority to declare a national emergency, which, by the way, could you explain the National Emergencies Act
So
and what's in it?
we went through this, and basically what this does is this gives the president really kind of carte blanche control.
Yeah.
So what it does is it's supposed to work by 6-month periods. And one of the things that I pointed out to you when we were looking at this was, where is it? Of course, I miss it. Okay, so where is it?
I think, but before you continue with this, why I wanted to say this is because if the president only has that much authority under Article 2 of the Constitution, which delegates his powers, right? It delegates exactly what his powers are. Where is the constitutional amendment that gave him more power? Not a bill, not a law, the constitutional amendment that says we're revising this Constitution to give the president more power.
Yeah. And one of the things that scares me about this, which I think really expands his power, is it says it directs the president to transmit to Congress within 90 days after the end of each 6-month period. So they go 6 months with this national emergency. Then Congress is supposed to meet and decide, okay, is this still good or not? Okay. He's supposed to give a report on the total expenditures incurred by the United States government during the 6-month period, which are directly attributable to the exercise of powers and authorities conferred by such declaration. So basically what that's saying is, okay, you got to come back and tell us how much it cost you to do this.
Yeah. So
No,
you go spend your money
Yeah. So
and let us know how much it was.
So it's basically saying you've got control of the purse now. That was never a president's position or power.
You're right.
That was Congress's power. More directly, the House's.
Yeah, because under Article 1, section, I believe, 5 or 4, basically the power of the purse is in the Congress.
Yep.
That is their job. They're the ones who vote on what spending is and what isn't in and aligning with the Constitution. Nothing more than that, right? Now, the 14th Amendment and all this stuff, but it kind of just like, you know what I mean? General welfare clauses and all that crap, and then just getting lawyers involved. And, you know, it didn't say this, so we can do that. You know, it says this, but it didn't say this, so it doesn't mean we can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, so we start getting lawyers involved in all that stuff. Let me ask you this, though, about the Emergency Powers Act, right?
Sure.
Does Congress get the right to determine if the president is right calling a national emergency? Because now he's got 15 states trying to sue him now.
Yeah. Which one could argue, well, Congress is the one who determines the laws, right? They're the legislature, so they legislate, they determine laws. But the problem is what they're doing is they're giving a power that was not granted by the Constitution.
To the
right?
president.
We got to
Yeah.
go back to the amendment process. And I really believe that that's where the key lies is this has got to be amendment to the Constitution in order to be able to provide this, because you're opening up Pandora's box. All of a sudden you get Congress who's throwing out power to anybody who they want. You know,
Right.
Jonathan and I were having a discussion about regulatory agencies. The reason
We're talking about like IRS, EPA.
DOE.
Yeah,
and-
explain. Go ahead.
So
keep going.
what we were talking about was why conservatives or you know, libertarians, people liberty-minded have such a problem with these regulatory agencies is because they're unelected bureaucrats who are making law. Because if you don't pay your taxes, guess what happens? You can get jailed, fined,
Right.
all your assets seized. That's a power. But we never elected the IRS. We never determined the IRS as a constitutional body. Congress handed over regulation, which regulation is law. I don't care what you tell me. If you break a regulation by the EPA can fine you. They can punish you. They can coerce you to justice or whatever, however you want to say it. So the problem is Congress is handing out power to everybody. And now they're handing out power to the president. They have been for a while, right?
Long
you know,
while.
the Patriot Act and all of this. Like,
Before that, they were allowing executive
yeah,
powers
yeah.
for
You
so
go back
long.
to the New Deal. The New Deal was a huge hand of
man.
power.
Again, well, that was Democrats, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So there's always this power of the purse situation in the Democratic hands, but let's be honest here, Republicans have done just as bad,
yeah.
right? And all that stuff. I think the important issue to hit here is I do believe we need to do something. We have a lot of illegal immigration happening. There's a lot going on as far as like border crisis and internationally, we're seeing a lot of things unfolding. Abortion's a prevalent topic for us. We've talked about that extensively. So we have to do something, right? Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's, and I'm asking you this so we can just kind of have a dialogue, because I started thinking you could elect the right dudes, and I believe Trump's trying to do his best. President Trump's trying to do his best. I gotta start saying that. President Trump's trying to do his best to do his job. I believe that. I don't want to think ill of people. People say Obama was the Antichrist. Okay. That's going to win and confer favor.
It doesn't help.
Yeah, it doesn't help anything, and I don't agree with that, man.
Yeah.
Again, they have an ideology that there's, dude, 16 years ago, and the Bible says if you don't profess Christ, you're Antichrist. I get that part, but he never did that. He never did that. He never said he wasn't a Christian, or he never bashed Christ. I think he said he didn't believe it once or something like that. It was like some speech long ago.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here.
And people got on him for what he wasn't doing. Like he
Yeah,
didn't go to the
man.
prayer breakfast or didn't have the prayer breakfast or something like that.
Look,
they all got on
but
him.
we went after him as far as constitutionally and some of the things he did,
yeah.
man. Like, we went after it.
The
we
Tea
had
Party,
to,
man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I support and back it. I'm not saying anything that President Obama did was right. I'm not saying that. But I'm looking at this president now, and I'm saying, man, what can we do to help him, right? Because we elect good men. Let's say we elect all these good men, but if the hearts of the people aren't changed, all you're doing is solidifying their hatred towards Christianity, because now Christianity's like at the forefront, right? And I believe if we don't change the hearts of the people first, and we elect good people, their hearts are going to harden even more. They're going to come even because can't force people to obey God. You just can't do it. That's why the church is so important. That's why I'm not speaking against President Trump. I'm saying this: while we have good men in office, while we have the people that we feel are right in office, start preaching the gospel, continue to preach the gospel, because that's where you're going to win this battle in the culture. How are you going to elect good people? You still got the culture war saying that it's okay, which is so confusing. You have misogynistic rappers, rockers, all these things talking about women, but yet we have the same movement in Hollywood called Me Too. Right?
Yeah.
We're destroying ourselves, and I keep saying this. The Democrats are folding this whole Jussie Smollett, what's his name?
Yeah.
That faked his thing. That's happened more often than we know, and there's not a lot reported on it.
Yeah.
That happens often. It's
Hoaxes happen all the
a
time.
lot, and we don't hear about it. And they're turning against themselves now, because now you're attacking your own. When Alexandria Ocasio lost Amazon, basically it was I don't know if it was her district, but the state, was it her district, right? They came against her. A lot of Democrats did.
Yeah.
But what are you doing? We just lost, was it 25,000 jobs?
Yep.
Oh, but it wasn't the right deal. Wait a minute. Didn't you want the people to work? Well, billionaires get richer. Didn't Netflix just sign a deal with you for $10 million for your story? $10 million, girl. Are you going to redistribute that in your district? Are you going to keep all that?
That goes back to consistency.
Exactly.
Right?
This is what I'm talking about. They're not consistent. Bernie Sanders says we can't have more rich people. He's got 3 houses and drives an Audi R8. And he's a nice millionaire himself. Elizabeth Warren, we need to work for the middle class. I've always been for the middle class. As you're I think she's worth what, $4 million. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't ever hear the Republicans saying that. They love money. And they're open to say it. They love capitalism. They want money. And I'm not saying, look, money's not bad. It's when you love it too much. It's when it becomes your idol, right? But dude, the fact that they're saying that, the hearts are either getting harder against it. That's why the gospel's so important. What can we do as a people? I got to get back to the point because I'm getting off on a tangent here. I got off on a rabbit trail. What's it? And Kate Carl said it's got to take a spiritual awakening. I agree. But right now, what can we do to aid President Trump into doing things constitutionally? Because again, do I believe something needs to be done on the border? Yeah. Enforce the law.
Yeah.
When you see illegals come in, got to deport them.
And I had a buddy who pointed that out. When
Yes, I said that. Yes, quote me on it.
He and I were talking about the National Emergencies Act. And,
Right.
And he called me up and he was like, I completely disagree with both of you. I was like, good, let's have a conversation. And not that he and I really came to an agreement at the end of it, but I see where he's coming from. His whole point was, look, if you don't secure this border, if you don't start cracking down on illegal immigration, the country's gone anyways because you have this flood of voters who are going to vote Democrat. They're going to vote the socialist policies that they were fleeing from.
But let me ask him this then. Why can't we get the people elected in your area to impeach those people who aren't upholding the law?
Yeah. And my point was you've got to keep your principles, otherwise you're toast anyways. If we don't keep our principles, then we're compromising our own consistency, our own principles in order just to get the right ends. Right? Then we're falling into the ends justify the means.
Right.
And that's
Ooh,
a
so
really
sticky.
dangerous area.
It is, man. No matter what you do, it's a sticky area.
Yeah, and I completely see his
I do
concern
too.
because in 20 years, especially with what they're trying to do with the Electoral College to do away with it, there's I don't know how many states are trying to hold votes on getting rid of the Electoral College, which you and I need to sit down and discuss more, like constitutionally, federally, how does that work?
Yep.
But I know California and Colorado have both tried to do away with it. And New York. Well, if California and New York do away with the Electoral College system and they just go popular vote.
That's a win for the Dems easy, man.
Yeah.
Because they got the big populist votes.
And the populist votes, like you look at the map, and I know I'm getting on a bit of a tangent, but I'll come back to it. You look at the...
It's just good fodder for the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Pick what you want out of it, leave behind the rest. The county maps, if you look at the county maps, what splits Republican, Democrat, you'll notice it's all the cities
big
vote
cities.
Democrat, the big cities.
Yeah.
And then all the rural areas end up, pretty much all the rural areas end up voting Republican. Well, the problem is the big cities outpopulate the rural areas. And the whole reason they had the Electoral College was because they didn't want big populous areas dictating to rural areas what to do. This happened in California. There is a whole fight about water. And the rural areas were fighting this legislation that was going to change how water was distributed. Well, they got outvoted by the city because the city said, well, we want your water. And the rural areas, they had no real recourse because they couldn't fight by the numbers, even though it was important that their voice was heard, and that's where the Electoral College comes into play.
But do you see how that brings that point back? Keep your point. Because
go for it.
Do you see how this brings back to your point, the ends justify the means?
Yeah.
Because, hey, they needed water, so they just went in and outvoted the rural areas. But in the end, it was bad. And here, let's take it with this example.
That's pure democracy, which that's two wolves and a lamb voting for what's for dinner.
That's right. And that's just as dangerous, right? If you think about it in the terms of a rural community versus a populous community. Rural communities, man, back in the day, farmers, they don't really make a lot of money. No. They were content living on their farms and blah, blah, blah. But if the big cities raised their taxes and forced it on the rural, like if the state voted to raise taxes, maybe bigger cities can do it because there's populous jobs there and there's more money to be made in the city. But what about the rural guy who's just got his cows and just trying to make a little living, but you raise his taxes? How's he going to do that? See what happens?
Yeah.
When we're just led to be free, who we are, right? I firmly believe this. If the states were just left to be the states, as Article 10 says in the Constitution, all the powers that are not authorized and given to the Congress of the United States shall be left to the states, people would leave Cali in droves, I mean. They would just leave because it's like, you're way taxing us to death. Now Minnesota wants to raise their gas tax again. I think they were 24th in the nation or something like that. Now they're going to be 4th highest in the nation. It never stops with these people.
Dude, Michigan, my dad told me this. Michigan is putting forward somebody in the Michigan legislature has put forward the idea of a 40-cent gas tax.
That's the governor. What's her name?
Was it the governor who actually did it? I was thinking it was somebody in, but she's full speed ahead
What
of
happened last
expansion
year
of
when
government.
you upped it? What was it? 20%? I can't remember what it was. My buddy told me about it. What happened to that money? You need.
There's
When is
always
it going to
more money.
stop?
Yeah.
What are you doing with all this money that you're taking in? I thought, well, it's to pay for this program. Okay, so when that's funded, then what? You're going to give the money back to the people? No, they just keep increasing in power. That is my only fear when it comes to the president's actions. Because let's say Trump doesn't get reelected, which I'm praying that doesn't happen and it gives power to a Democrat, right? We're going to come back to this in 2 more years and say, this is what we were trying to say, and I don't want to do that.
I really don't want to hit that point.
You know, I witnessed Jesse Ventura long ago, 2007, I believe it was, or 8. And I got to meet him, and I was at a gas station. I got to witness to him. I remember when he was, after he ran for governor. Yeah, it was after he ran for governor. So it was about 2008, I think it was, because I think he got out in, I can't remember, 2004. And he was talking about he wanted to legalize prostitution. He thought that was a good idea. It brings more tax revenue, and freedom should be free. You know, all these things, so they should just choose what they do. And I'm like, so you're legalizing immorality is what you're doing. So who gets to determine morality, right? So we went on this big debate back and forth. He was obviously not a Christian. And I said, so what happens, man? I said, so if you legalize that kind of immorality, what's to stop pedophilia from being normalized? He laughed in my face. That'll never happen. I remember what he said. And though we did shake hands, it was very respectable. He was a very, very cool guy, very opinionated, just like I am, right? But I love facts. And so I said, man, but they're going to try. I don't think it was 3 years later, some senators in that area started like doing bills about legalizing and normalizing this thing and calling it, hey, it's just it's no longer a disease. It should be an accepted practice. Then they had a TED talk come out about the pedophile thing.
Yep.
And now they're trying to normalize.
Salon had a series of articles by a pedophile about how he was okay, and
he was okay. He could do what he wants, right, because of love. Mm-hmm. Now the transgender issues started coming up, which again, there's no firm basis in fact scientifically for these people to justify transgenderism, right? But it's been legalized and normalized. Guys, I'm telling you, the more you legalize the wrong thing, it'll continue to grow. Listen, ask yourselves this question. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, and I'm not blaming the one person. I'm blaming our structure in general and what we've done. Has government shrunk or gotten bigger? It keeps getting bigger. So what happens to your liberty? It starts to dissipate. That's all I'm talking about. Okay, I'm going to say this one more time. I honor the president. I want him to do well, because if he succeeds and our Congress succeeds and the Supreme Court succeeds, we all succeed. They're not supposed to be in cahoots with each other. They're supposed to keep each other to check and balance, right? I kind of like discord a little bit, because President Trump can't do everything he wants to. The Congress can't do everything they want to because the president can veto. Yeah. Supreme Court can check the president and check Congress. It's supposed to be that way.
I think I always kind of chuckle when people say, oh, there's so much gridlock in Congress. Good.
Amen.
That means they can't just do what they want to do.
Right. And every bill that comes out, there's like 3,000 pages that they get at 4 a.m. Oh, my goodness. And then they have to vote it at 11 o'clock. How are you going to read 3,000 pages in 3 hours? Ask yourselves the question. That's all I'm saying. Listen, and we're going to pray for President Trump in the show.
Sure.
Because I'm behind the guy. I am. Yeah. Right? I just want him to do the right thing. That's all. You think he's doing the right thing by advancing Christian causes. He's doing the right thing if he just becomes a Christian and follows the Constitution. Your job is to advance Christian causes, not the president.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
that's the issue.
And in his own personal declarations and everything.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. Go
100%.
for it.
Our presidents have done it in their past declarations and their speeches. Yeah.
And I think
I'm talking about bills.
Yeah. And I think it's important if he voices himself as a Christian.
Of course.
Go for it. And I'm glad he's really kind of opened it back towards this discussion
with black
of God.
Clergy and he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
In those areas.
We're nervous about using all the powers given to you by Congress. And this National Emergencies Act, you mentioned this earlier tonight before the podcast. You said at first it was like 700, 800 million. Then it was, well, okay, we'll give you 1.3 billion. but he wanted $5 billion
5.7.
after the 700, 800 million. Now he's getting $8 billion handed to him from Army and DOD and all of that, which that goes back to the
a whole
purse
other worm.
strings.
Yeah. You went
which-
on that tangent. That was good too.
Yeah, the purse strings, like, and that's something, which we didn't have this in the podcast. I should bring that up real quick. With the purse strings, who's supposed to have control of the purse strings?
According to the Constitution, the Congress.
Congress, right?
Yeah.
Now, when these departments come with their budgets, they have to have line by line items, and those items are approved by Congress, right? So what he's doing is he's getting funding from these departments that these line items haven't been approved by Congress. Now, somebody, if you know more about this, feel free to check me on it, right? If there's something that I'm missing here, please, by all means, check me on it. But what I'm seeing here is they're giving him funding for stuff that hasn't been approved by Congress.
Right. It was approved for other departments, but then they're funneling the money.
They're funneling to him, which gives him control of the purse.
If I was to do that and funnel it from different businesses, isn't that money laundering? And would that be considered laundering, or what would you call it?
I mean, the process of laundering is funneling money from an illegal source into a legal source. So, I mean, roundabout way, you could maybe make an argument that this is money laundering because he couldn't get the money from Congress.
Right. And again,
Yeah.
he's only doing what he knows to do.
And
what his lawyers advise him, man.
And he's been given permission
Right.
by an act of Congress.
Right.
Our problem is Congress did not have the authority to make that act.
Let's be honest, folks. The only issue that President Trump is running into in a lot of ways with his legislation that he'd like to propose is Congress.
Yeah.
The spineless, in a lot of ways, by the grace of God. I don't want to be mean to them either, but
If you want to hear us complain, bring up all the stuff that Congress should have done.
man, that they should be doing, and they're not. And it's funny because the Democrats are like, oh man, he's overreaching power. It's not constitutional. He doesn't have the authority for this. I'm like, man, where were you for the last 8 years before President Trump? Where were you? Right? But when it's your guy, it's okay. Same thing with the Republicans. When it's your guy, it's okay. What I'm saying is it's not okay if it's not constitutional.
Okay. It doesn't matter whose guy it is.
That's right, man. And look, again, I think has he said a lot of rhetoric? Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I'll tell you something, man. I know being an evangelist and a pastor sometimes, I've stuck my foot in my mouth many times and said some things, not intentionally. Maybe he's been intentional. I don't know. Probably has, right? But I know I've said some things maybe in my past I shouldn't have said. Sometimes I say stuff on the podcast and I'm like, I shouldn't have said it that way. Not good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll redo that or I'll delete that or something like that because it just didn't come out the way I wanted it to. And you always got to check yourself. You always got to be wise with your words. Maybe he's not the most articulate dude. Maybe he doesn't say all the things right. But I believe this. I do believe that he's trying to do his best with the powers that he thinks he's been given. And that's okay. I understand that. Again, I just want you guys to know, as a self-evident ministry and the podcast and things like that, my duty is to make sure that we're following that piece of paper because the ends never justify the means, ever. Ever, man. It's not good. God forcing us to love him as Gentiles would never work. It just would not work. You know, my sons, let me say it this way. My sons, when they get punished for doing something wrong, they always say, Dad, you're so mean. You punish me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, did I punish you or did you choose the consequence you already knew was going to happen?
Ooh.
Was it me punishing you or did you choose that consequence? When I look at who we've elected, and dude, let's be honest here. Look how bad this has become. We're literally having democratic socialists. Now, forget that. We're having socialists run for the presidency of a republic. Socialism. Not once have you seen these democratic presidential candidates talk about the Constitution and what they want to propose.
Unless it helps their case against President Trump.
That's exactly right. But I'm talking about presidents where it's like free college, free
you're
tuition,
absolutely
free. You have no authority to even guarantee that as a president. The other thing, too, about this Emergency Powers Act, and, I don't want to delve too far in this, but what about that spending bill? He's like, man, I'm not going to sign the spending bill unless you give me my money, right? So is he going to sign the bill, or did he sign the bill already? Did he sign that bill, the spending bill?
Yeah, he did.
So he signed the spending bill and declared a national emergency. So you gave everything that they wanted to the other side.
Yeah, and there was a lot of stuff in there that I know a lot of conservatives weren't happy with. And it kind of people are going back and forth about whether or not it gave away the farm in order to get his money. Now, I hear the voices coming out, and I'm not disparaging them at all, but the voices will immediately come out and say he's a deal maker. He's going to make deals in order to get what he needs. To an extent, I agree. Right? You gotta make a deal. You gotta
compromise.
You gotta compromise.
What do they
somewhere.
say? Compromise is good.
Yeah,
I guess. Not your soul, though.
Yeah, never your soul.
Never your soul.
The question is, how far do you compromise? And where does it get into compromising your foundation as opposed to just compromising the terms?
Yeah. And again, this is an ongoing discussion. I mean, the more I study, the more I'm like, man, Lord, we are so far from where we need to be.
And this is constitutional limit has always been a battle. It was a battle as soon as the country was founded and the Constitution was ratified.
Yep.
It's always been a battle. So don't think that we're bringing up something
No, man.
new,
There's a debate about President Washington. I can't remember. It just escaped me. I had it in my head. If he defied his own authority, and my buddy Dave Benner, I think it's DaveBenner.com, BenNer, Dave Benner. This dude will blow your mind out of the water when you talk like how he knows everything about everything. This guy, and I ask him a lot of counsel and hey, what can I read about economy and stuff like that. He's just so good at what he does. He actually wrote a book on the 14th Amendment. I highly recommend it. Really good stuff. But he was talking about it how even as early as President Washington, people questioned did he go overboard with his power as the president? And those kind of things. So it's like this is an ongoing battle of how much authority do we give a man who's just as imperfect as you are? Or a body politic of people who's just as imperfect, if not worse sometimes, than you are morally.
Yeah.
How much power do you give them? We elected him. God. No. If they're worse off morally than you, why do you give them the authority to run your life? That's the question.
Yeah. And I think it gets down to a philosophical stance where you need to have the voices who stand for tradition and foundation because they're the ones who are going, look, this base is important. We need to continue on this base because if we get outside the boundaries, everything breaks loose. But you also need the other side to help keep them from losing sight.
Totally.
You need that other side to go, look, no, you're losing sight of some stuff here and you need to readjust because you're so fixated. That's exactly what happened in the Bible. God put down the laws and the commandments. What happened with the Jews? They got so focused on the law, right? And it was epitomized by the Pharisees. They got so focused on the law, they lost the spirit, right? And we've got to balance that stuff.
Right. And I think, again, the purpose of the podcast is to bring up real relevant discussion on current issues right now. We have a job to do, man.
Yeah.
Just like I'm a watchdog for the gospel, I'm supposed to defend the gospel, right? And I'll defend it against people who claim to represent it. I'm not saying I'll call them out publicly. I don't think that's right to do as far as oh, look what he's doing. That's not what I'm doing, President Trump. I'm not doing that at all. I'm saying I just want him to know. And what is it going to take? It's not going to take just us praying for him. It's education. It's making sure he understands the Constitution and not just lawyers. Because, man, let's be honest here, man. Lawyers are really good at twisting things, too. They have something called criminal defense where they can twist laws to defend the criminal. That is insane to me. You know what I mean? They can get criminals off. It's crazy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, I'm not saying all people who are considered criminals are bad.
And criminals deserve a defense in court.
Yes.
But isn't it funny how an attorney can get them off because of one minor slip up in a detail?
Yeah. No, there are some people who are put in jail who I don't believe should be put in jail.
No.
For petty offenses. I agree with that stuff. And we should do something about it. But again, going back to the president, I wish everybody would understand that we're not against him. I don't mean that stuff. I think I can apologize for this. I wasn't very clear in the post how I put it. And I understand why people were frustrated at me and things like that. I just want you to know it's not that I'm against him. I just want a free country. I just want a free country, man. Give me liberty. Like K. Carl Smith said last week, give me liberty, man, or give me death. That's what Patrick Henry said.
Yeah.
Dude, these guys stood on principle. Principle. They didn't care if you liked it or not. Have I ever said that quote live on Samuel Adams when he said, if you prefer wealth rather than liberty, and if you prefer tranquility over the animated contest of freedom, go from us in peace. He said, we ask not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains sit lightly upon you. May our posterity forget that you are our countrymen. That's what he thought of compromise. We need liberty, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How far is this going to go where we say, whoa, enough's enough? How far is it going to go? I want President Trump to get it right, man. I want him to not work with Congress necessarily, but say, Congress, this is your job. Keep the people free. Keep the people safe. That's your job. Not more government. Just enforce the laws we already have. Go down to the border. Make sure we have the laws enforced that we already have. We don't need more laws. We don't need a president declaring a national emergency. We should have already done that already if this was such a problem. Because, dude, this has been a problem since 1790.
Yeah.
Illegals have been coming in, and we just pardon them. But it won't happen again, we promise. And then it happens again.
It becomes a crisis because it becomes relevant news.
That's exactly it.
Like if all of this stuff, abortion, it's been there before. Immigration, it's been there before. All of this stuff, like, it gets ginned up as crisis. So then it becomes, we need to solve this now. I'm not saying it's not a problem. And abortion, that's really getting out of hand. More states are coming forward with abortion at all times for any reason laws.
And some are coming out with personhood laws.
Some are
Iowa,
bucking
like
against it, which, hey, more power to you.
But if you think about it, since President Bush's presidency, terrorism was the biggest problem. Remember?
You notice how we
Crisis.
don't care about it anymore?
Right. We don't really talk about it much. Under President Obama's administration, healthcare was the biggest crisis. And we focused on that. Man. Healthcare and gay rights.
Yep.
We made it a crisis. It was constantly pushed to us. It's a crisis. President Trump's national security border wall.
Immigration.
But President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, and now President Trump have all talked about the border crisis.
And
all of them.
They all supported immigration control.
That's exactly right. So let's enforce it. But they never really got around to enforcing. They talked about it, right, to appease the people. And we're talking about Democrats, too.
Yeah.
They were for strong border security.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least they
Clinton,
said it.
Obama, Pelosi, Reid,
Dude, President
Schumer,
Clinton,
all of these guys talked
President
about
Clinton,
it.
in that speech he gave, the one that I saw, we should post it. I think we should tag it on here. When he gave that speech about illegal immigration, he'd be considered a Republican today.
Yeah,
how harsh he
absolutely.
was about that.
Yeah.
We're going to punish companies that hire illegal immigrants. I mean, dude, strict. This is what I'm for, and people cheered him for it.
No.
You know what I mean? I think it's just that's where we're coming from. Both sides have done this.
Yeah.
I want President Trump to succeed. I love this country, man. I don't just want to leave my kid. Look, what do we got left? 40 years of our life?
If we're good.
If we're good, and not like workspace, but if I don't go out and
Good point.
get hit by a car, if you know what I mean, take care of myself, I'll have good 40 years. In that 40 years, my kids will be 40, 50, right? Because I'll be in my 80s. What am I going to leave them? What am I going to leave them? So you got your wall, man. Good for you. Now what?
Yeah.
What about keeping the people free? How come government is still spending out of control? How come the government still keeps increasing? How come we have more programs that have been failing? We all know this, dude. How come the IRS is still, stealing from the American people in a lot of ways, dude? I'm just being honest. Why is abortion running rampant? What's next? You know what I mean? I don't want that for my kids. That's the only reason I'm strict on these things, not because I dislike the president. And I've never, you know what I mean? Did I think he was the right guy at first? Absolutely not. The guy had a mouth and he was crazy, at first. And now it's wow, he's kind of shocking me.
He really has cleaned up his act.
He really has.
And I remember
from what he was.
Well, yeah. And I remember we had a podcast, this was a while ago, and we had kind of discussed and we had started talking about we think he's changing. We think he's starting to become more controlled. And he's definitely showed himself as more controlled, which actually makes him more effective. Because then when he nails the issues in a real blunt way, they can't just come back on him and go, well, he's just being a jerk. more and more the things that he's saying are controlled enough but blunt enough to where it's just like you can't really argue
Right.
with the guy's point.
Right. And I really do want to apologize for one more thing. I don't think that we were clear on how we said things about the president.
I think you're right.
I think we kind of, people can take it too far where we're like, they're against the president. They're not. I was saying I wasn't Republican, not because of President Trump. I just think the Republican Party has done a lot of disservice as far as Congress and things like that. They've been letting us down a lot. But I'm seeing too, we have to work within in the system that we have.
Yeah.
We have to work with the two-party system. So forgive me for that. I don't, listen, man, I'm an opinion-based guy in a lot of ways too, not just facts. Sometimes I just say what's on my heart. And I think I'm learning that there's a system we have. We've got to work within it. Bill Federer was right.
Yeah.
You're up here. We're back here. We need to get to where you're at. So you got to relate to us here to get there. I think we can start there now. I think I can start to understand and wrap my head around it. But I'm not going to compromise principle.
And
I can't do that. And so we have to hold them accountable just as much.
And
so I
thi-
apologize for that.
I think we need voices like yours that remind everybody of the goal.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy for everybody to pat each other on the back and say, oh, well, we limited abortion to 24 weeks and under. How great are we? Okay, yeah, that's a good step, but that's not the goal. Stop patting yourself on the back and keep working. And there's got to be voices that see the clarity of the goal and say, no, this isn't good enough. This isn't good enough.
Yeah, and I think we should do more encouraging too. I think instead of constantly popping, I think let's encourage President Trump to pray more, to seek the counsel of the Lord, to seek the counsel of good men and good wisdom on the Constitution. We should encourage Congress. Please don't sit back idly knowing the truth.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't give your authority up so quickly. Don't, you know what I mean? Fight for the people. That's what you're there for. Not give them anything. Fight for them to keep their rights. Rights come from God. And, I think we should do a thing on the Bill of Rights now that we've done the presidency.
Yeah.
And I believe we did Congress's job, too, in earlier podcasts. Yeah. But we should do a Bill of Rights thing. And again, I think encouragement always is the best route to take. As a matter of fact, prophecy is encouragement and that kind of thing. And I'm not saying I'm a prophet, but I'm saying that, like, we should be encouraging more. And I hope that you understand from us, right, that sometimes with principle comes passion. With passion comes, I'm just going to say what's on my mind and in my heart. I never meant to attack President Trump. That is not my deal here. I want to be able to meet him someday. I hope I do. And sometimes when I get those thoughts, things happen like that for me because God's good. God's so good to me. And you're going to be right beside me, man. You know what I mean? You're going to be right beside me.
Here we go.
And you know what? You say that we need voices like mine. We need voices like you two that have reason and that can pull me back to earth too. Because we have behind closed doors, guys, him and I have so many discussions and he reins me in like, wait a minute though, what about this? I'm like, great point. So there's this constant going back and forth of, I get so, hey, let's stick to the law. But it's like, but what's the spirit of the law? What does that look like? How does it play out? You know what I mean? And I want to remain in that frame, in that forefront. So,
and you keep me clear, man. Like, and that's something I value is like you keep my goals clear. So because, and there's discussions I want to have with you that hopefully we can have in future podcasts that get really muddy. And I appreciate how you can, hit.
Yeah.
But
Scripture
this is our goal.
Yeah. Y'all hungry?
Yeah. Let's grab some food.
What a sissy.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
he's
You better delete
tired.
that. A sissy on live here. No, I ain't compromising my
Exposed.
principle. I ain't compromising.
I think you're right, and we'll quickly wrap this up. I think you're absolutely right in saying that we've got to really nail solutions and hope.
Yeah.
And I want to get more into and not right now, but in general with the podcast, I want to get more into solutions and not just it's the job of the church, which we say a lot of, like, the church should be doing this. Okay, how does the church do this and what does that look like?
Yeah, and and Pastor,
real
our pastor
step-by-step.
here really challenged me with that.
Yeah.
He said, I think a lot of people get outraged about the abortion issue, but what's the solution? And I'm like, holy crap, what is the solution? Like, I never really thought that far, and forgive me for that. I'm human, man. I'm gonna mess up. I do believe in principle, and I'll stick to that. But what is the solution here? Is there cause for impeachment in California? But how can you do that when everything's corrupt, as far as like politicians are corrupt? And
Yeah.
we have some good people there, I'm sure. We're praying people, and there's a lot of good people in California too, man. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
great groups out there, a lot of good churches preaching the truth. My buddy Jake McCauley, which he's going to be on our podcast in May, he's coming down.
That's right.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. But
Good.
he's got really dear friends in California, in churches, private schools, all these things that are killing it out there. And so I want to acknowledge that too, because there's. And people say it's too far gone for Cali. I don't believe it. I believe where it's darkest, the light shines brightest, and God's going to win that. I have to have hope there. And I want to continue to have hope for this country. I've had a lot of people tell me, do you think it's too far gone? That is not my thing to worry about. My thing to worry about is do what I'm called to do and leave the results to God. That is my job.
It goes back to your kids, right?
That's exactly right. My job is to make sure that, like, if I preach the gospel, it's going to teach my kids how to love God, because my faith is being exercised and they're going to see it. And my kids have experienced it and tasted and seen in a lot of ways that the Lord is good, and that's cool.
Yeah.
I just prayed with them the other night, man. And I stopped in the middle of my prayer and I'm like, Lord, I just want connection with you. And it just dropped on me. I just felt the Lord. I felt the presence of God. And also my kids started praying for our new house. It's
Amen.
like, Lord, I'm praying for our house. My youngest.
Aaron?
He's never done that. Yeah.
Amen.
He's never done it. He's 5 years old.
Yeah.
He starts praying for a house, and I thank you, God, for a house and a nice house. And, like, just, he's never done that before. I just want them to be in a free country. I just want us to follow the Lord. That's it. Forgive me if I've turned you off sometimes by having the passion that I have. I just don't want us to go where we're depending on a government and not the Lord anymore.
Yeah.
To depend on a president. Look what happened with Saul. Okay? We could easily go back to that. That is not what we want. That is not what guys like Ben Shapiro want, and guys like Steven Crowder and all these cats. What's his name? A lot of the podcasters out there, and their names escape me. Forgive me, Lord. Their names escape me, but there's a lot of people that just want liberty. They just want freedom,
Yeah.
and we can achieve that again. I think we have to give it back to the states too.
Yeah.
We just do. The states know what to do. We're the ones that are in the state. Let us have our rights back because God gave them to me. That's all. I'm not trying to.
And
You know what I mean? We're not
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
attack people here. That's not our job.
and it totally comes down to local elections. And we had talked about
Tons.
connecting to the mayor, connecting to our city councils, connecting to our school boards, connecting to our districts. Like, we so focused on the president and the Congress
That's
because
right.
that's all we
Great
hear
point.
about on CNN, right? We need to get back to the basics. If you guys want solutions, like, that's what you're looking for, is grassroots, getting back to the basics, getting back to the foundation. That's my obsession, right? School boards, city councils, city governments, districts, county governments, state governments, whatever you feel
Your
most
areas in,
passionate,
yeah,
or
school
your
boards.
area, like, that's where it really boils down to, because when that starts changing, when the culture around you starts changing, that starts changing the things up the chain.
That's it, buddy. And you know what? To be honest with you, that's prophecy. So we want to say we love you guys. We thank you so much for listening to the podcast. It wasn't as animated as I thought it was going to be, but listen, what we're trying to do and what we're doing actually is providing you with the information that you need to make a sound decision. We want to start providing more solutions to these issues because they're huge. And again, I just want our kids to be free.
Absolutely.
I want our kids to have something that they can hold on to and trust in and all these things. And it's the Lord for us first. It's the gospel for us first. I can't preach about the history of America and how it was founded on God if the heart doesn't change. It's useless information. It won't make sense to people.
Absolutely.
And so our focus is the gospel. Again, go on theselfevidenttruth.com. You guys can go find out more information about the podcast. If you'd like to support us, do so with a donation or monthly support. We could totally use that. We really need your support in those areas to keep this podcast going. We really want to start providing for these guys that are helping us because it takes a lot, and we don't mind sacrifice. Nobody's ever denied sacrifice. We've been doing that for years. It's not the issue. The issue is it's like, hey, if it's in our means to help. The Bible says if you have the means to do good, right, don't withhold it.
Yeah.
Don't withhold it from someone, and we really need your support. We also are trying to find. I'm going to throw this out there to you too. We're actually trying to find sponsors, business sponsors, to help us as well with the podcast. If you believe in us that much, and I'm sure you do, consider sponsoring us from your business. We would like to do a commercial for you, whatever it looks like, however that looks. We want people to start supporting this from their businesses and things like that, because that's just going to help further and propel the message. I've got some tours coming up here in March. I'll be leaving in March. I believe April, June I'll be out. August I'll be out. So I'll be continuously touring still. We'll be still going to schools and colleges and all these things. We're still doing Self-Evident as we're continuing to pastor and do the podcast and things like that. But we love feeding you. We love talking to you. We love the feedback that we get. And we just want to honor God. That's the only thing we want to do here. So again, God bless you guys. We love you so much. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Love you guys.